This is Irish Illustrated's Instant Analysis, brought to you by the RV Manufactured Housing Hall of Fame and the Northern Indiana Event Center in Elkhart, Indiana. I'm Tim Prister with Tim O'Malley from Irish Illustrated, John Brice from FootballScoop. We just spent some time, kind of the post-mortem on the Notre Dame Miami game. First opportunity, we've had an opportunity to spend some time with Marcus Freeman. Most of the talk was about defense and fitting and playing fast and all the things that you want the defense to do, which it didn't necessarily do against Miami. But there was some positive talk about CJ Carr at quarterback and how they need to handle things with him moving forward.
Yeah, probably the most entertaining quote, other than maybe Shane Gillis' commentary at the end from Marcus Freeman, was him saying CJ Carr has mastery of the entire playbook, the entire game plan. He can execute anything that the coaches want, but said that they need to be more intentional as coaches and telling him sometimes, hey, eliminate the read here. We're handing it to 4 or to 24. But he did say, you know, if you leave it up to CJ, he'll, quote, bomb it down the field every time. And he laughed and he said, seriously, he would throw it downfield every single time if he could. So that gives you a little bit more insight into CJ Carr. I talked to some people in the program late last week, and they just, again, were heralding his command presence even coming out of that game. Just really indicated that he's got a good feel about him, a good presence about him, and emerging leadership qualities about him.
Well, the time will come when they're just going to turn CJ Carr loose and let him throw the football. Now's not necessarily the time to do it. I think you do open things up for him. But it really comes down to, first and foremost, you've got to – it can't be so difficult to get football in the hands of a running back.
No, it's not. And I did ask Coach Freeman, you know, obviously you could just say, hey, this is the time we're handing it to number 4, but what if there's an 8th guy in the box? Well, that is not you just give the ball to number 4 to spite yourself and make it 2nd and 10. But he said you have to have RPOs where, all right, this is an RPO, but we kind of want you to give it. This is an RPO, but we kind of want you to throw it. And then there's some situations where CJ Carr should recognize we have the numbers. No matter what, this is going to number 4. It's a tough balance, and I don't think you probably didn't put that in his hands for game number 1. They can do so more now. I really just think that Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price have to be the focal point of the first quarter if it's not a vertical passing game, with a vertical passing game to complement it.
Yeah, I was going to say, with the vertical
Yes.
part of it, Malachi Fields is somebody that has to be involved there as well. JB, the term or the word paralyzed was used in talking about the defense, and I asked him about, you know, what the priorities were coming out of that game defensively. But, you know, I really feel like he said a lot of things today that we were feeling coming out of the game, and I know certainly the fan base as well.
He did. He talked about he didn't say the defense played slow, but he said the defense didn't play with enough velocity. And he said clarity equals velocity. He even pointed to the fact that he said when he watched film that Boubacar Traore and Kingston Viliamu-Asa had made some plays that, quote, not exactly how you would script them on paper, but they made those plays because they played those instances with velocity. The other thing that stood out also somewhat about velocity and aggression was he said the offensive line played too laterally at times. And so I think those were what I took most from today's press conference from Marcus Freeman was the velocity component, especially on defense, and the lateral element, especially from his offensive line.
Yeah, that was, again, playing laterally.
Yeah.
These were things that we were saying coming out of the game.
And I honestly, though, I'm glad that he gave Miami credit where they deserved credit as well. I guarantee you they thought they could cover Malachi Toney better than they covered Malachi Toney in that game, especially when they put Christian Gray on him in the slot. I guarantee you they didn't think Carson Hobbs was going to get beat twice by that freshman that they'd only seen on tape in high school film because they trusted Carson Hobbs. I mean, they practically subbed him in for Smith for that play, and he made a good point. Like, look, sometimes the defensive line just made plays. Now, no one wants to hear that because you've heard about how good Notre Dame is, so if they can play with more clarity, there will be more velocity, and I just want to see the improvement from game 1 to game 2 with Chris Ash in the defense. I think that can be stark. My concern remains how much better the offensive line can play in game 1 against a defensive line or defense that's just as good.
Leadership was brought up, and this was a topic, again, after the game about how the captains played. Now, leadership goes much deeper than the captains. And Marcus Freeman said, you know, we don't choose captains based upon how they play per se or their productivity.
Especially not one game production.
Exactly. It's about leadership, and look, you're still hoping that there's a lot of leadership from that captain group that as a whole certainly struggled against Miami.
Yeah, and Marcus indicated he saw signs of that leadership last week on the practice field and in the Goog and in other elements. But he did acknowledge that the linebackers particularly, and Drake Bowen specifically, didn't have the type of game that Drake expected of himself. And he also noted, though, that Emil Wagner similarly did not have the type of game he would have expected. Now, he said Billy Schrouth graded out in their grades about as high as anybody at any position on the offense. So that was interesting for him to share that little nugget. But he seemed very heartened by all of it. We heard him say multiple times today, I have utmost confidence in this group, or I have utmost confidence in this leadership, utmost confidence in our personnel. I think he uttered some variation of those phrases multiple times today.
He was asked if there's any personnel changes he needed. He said, no, I have as much confidence as I've ever had in the personnel.
Right, exactly. And that leads me to talk about Lambert and Sullivan Absher, both of which, had their moments and had their poor moments as well. He went so far as to say that, I think that we went into the Miami game with the knowledge they were both going to play. I don't think that that's necessarily where they are this week, which leads me to believe that it's Gerby Lambert that's in the number one spot.
Still listed as or, but he threw that fact in, so they're probably not both expected to play. I would wonder if the bye week was used to find a backup left tackle situation other than Styles Prescott, who played his first career game against Miami in that situation, an obvious pass situation with Ruben Bain pinning his ears back. Do you think Sullivan Absher got some work at left tackle? We had a great question for our podcast. Did Absher work at left tackle all of camp? Probably not. He battled for right guard, and I bet he had to work at center.
Yeah.
So now you think maybe he could have worked at backup left tackle.
But it makes complete sense for Absher to be a guy that gets those reps this week. And even in that situation, I think you have to ad-lib a little bit. He's in his third year in the program.
Yeah.
Styles Prescott was just, I don't think any of us thought that he was ready for that situation. That proved to be true. So, look, you have to look at things a little bit differently. And if Sullivan Absher, we've been saying all along, is a guy that can back up each one of those positions in a pinch like they were.
That was a good chance.
Yeah, that was. They were in a pinch, and they needed a guy that's been in the program a little bit longer.
And along the offensive line, I know, again, in speaking with people, they love Anthony Knapp at left tackle, especially for his run blocking prowess. The next step is how much better can Anthony Knapp be in pass pro, and that's key to his evolution at the position, and that's going to be key to Notre Dame's evolution as an offensive line.
He was good in pass pro most of last year. Now, I think some people will disagree because they remember this game and that snap and this snap. But we always go back to what he did against Nick Scorton in the first game. And I don't think Notre Dame's hammering people every week if their left tackle is a weak link.
I thought he played well in the first half against Penn State, too, which might be as important as the way we graded him on a curve, probably, for his first game freshman year. Imagine his first game freshman year versus how this last game ended for your first game freshman year. We just talked about that at left tackle. He does run block well, Anthony Knapp. I kept trying to note that in the film review because I did not note many times where he pass protected well in this game. And you mentioned the word compromise for Emil Wagner. I don't think Knapp looked compromised, but he looked like he compromised his technique far too often, and I just don't know why that would have happened in year number 2.
I don't think they played with a lot of confidence, and I really don't understand why that is. I think Miami did play with a lot of confidence. They were playing at home. They have that comfort zone. But as we wrap up, JB, final thoughts from you.
Yeah, just one thing I do want to note in there, and speaking with some people, and this surprised me because I did not think it was the case. They said, people in the program said that Miami Hard Rock Stadium crowd ended up being actually much louder than they felt it was a year ago to open the season at Texas A&M. So at Texas A&M, you had 40,000 more people, and they said, and maybe we'll ask some more people about that on Tuesday night during interviews, but they said despite the fact that it was 40,000 fewer people, that it was a louder environment, that the fans were more kind of on top of you, and they just felt that that was significant. They think they'll benefit from it moving forward, but I was stunned by that, and when I was told this, I was like, you got to be kidding me, and they were just like, no, I'm telling you, it was louder.
Never let front runners attend a party, because that's what it became, and that's how they got into it.
Yeah.
That's Miami's crowd.
Smoking like a front runner.
No doubt about it. We're gonna head into the Irish Illustrated Insider Podcast, and for Tim O'Malley and John Brice, I'm Tim Priester, and this has been the RV Manufactured Housing, sponsored by the RV Manufactured Housing Hall of Fame and the Northern Indiana Event Center in Elkhart, Indiana.